The galaxy's last hope. The emergency alarm echoed through the Federation Council Hall like a death cry. Red lights flashed across the massive chamber where representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their floating seats. The air tasted of fear and desperation. Commander Vel stood at the center of the room, his tall, thin body made of what looked like living crystal. Blue light pulsed under his transparent skin as he spoke. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the worry hidden beneath. 17 colonies are gone, he said. 17 worlds gone in 17 days. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant humming of the translation machine seemed to quiet down. Vel pressed a button on his control pad. A huge hologram appeared above their heads, showing the galaxy map with red dots marking dead worlds. The Void Stalkers have returned, Vel continued. After sleeping for 10,000 years, they are awake and they are hunting. A creature from the Reptilian Alliance hissed softly, its green scales rippling with nervous energy. How many survivors? It asked. None, Vel replied. 0 survivors from any attack. The creatures leave nothing alive. The hologram changed. Now it showed grainy footage from a security camera. A dark shape moved through the corridors of a space station. It was hard to see clearly, the creature seemed to bend light around itself. Sometimes it looked like shadow, sometimes like empty space. But wherever it went, screaming followed. Then the screaming stopped. The footage cut to black. This is from mining station Kappa 9, Vel explained. 5,000 workers lived there. The station had military-grade shields and weapons. The stalkers broke through everything in 47 minutes. A blue-skinned delegate from the water worlds raised her fin-like hand. What do we know about these creatures? Vel's crystal body dimmed slightly. Very little. They come from the dark space between galaxies. They are highly intelligent. They can change their shape, become invisible, walk through walls. Every weapon we try fails against them. What about the Zenthari battle computers? Asked someone from the back. Their war machines calculate perfect battle plans. The Zenthari tried first, Vel said sadly. The creatures destroyed 3 of their war fleets. It was like the stalkers knew exactly what the computers would choose to do. The chamber erupted in worried voices. Different species spoke in their own languages, the translation machines working overtime. What about the Mechanic Collective? Called out a robot delegate, its metal voice echoing off the walls. Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. The mechanoids sent their best fighting robots, Vel replied. The stalkers tore through them like paper. Even quantum weapons had no effect. A floating brain in a glass tank pulsed with purple light. The Mindweave Coalition tried group telepathy, it said without moving what might have been lips. 50 of our best mind readers worked together. They could not even sense the creatures. It was like the stalkers do not exist in normal reality. More worried voices filled the air. Representatives stood up, waved tentacles, flapped wings, and made sounds of distress. Everyone was talking at once. Commander Vel raised his hand for silence. We have tried everything. Battle fleets, planet-killing weapons, psychic attacks, reality-bending technology. Nothing works. The stalkers are too smart, too fast, too strange. Then what do we do? Demanded a furry creature with 6 legs. Do we just wait to die? Vel's crystal body went completely dark for a moment. When the light returned, he looked tired. The Council has decided to ask for help from every member species. Even the new ones. Even the primitive ones. He turned to look at a small section of seats near the back corner. Almost hidden behind larger delegates sat 3 figures that looked very different from everyone else. They had pink skin, small eyes, and hair on their heads. They wore simple blue uniforms with small metal badges. Ambassador Han, Vel called out. Please approach the speaker's platform. One of the humans stood up slowly. He was not very tall, maybe 2 meters. His black hair was cut short and neat. He walked to the center of the chamber with steady steps. Other delegates stared at him as he passed. Han stopped in front of Commander Vel and gave a small bow. "Yes, Commander. The human species has only been part of the Federation for 2 standard years," Vel said. "Your people have no advanced weapons, no reality-bending technology, no psychic powers. But we are desperate. We must ask everyone for help." Han nodded. "What do you need from us?" "Anything," Vel said simply. "Any ideas, any weapons, any strategies. We know your species is still learning about space travel. We know you have limited resources. But please, if humans have anything that might help, we need it now." Han was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, alien delegates waited. Some looked hopeful. Most looked doubtful. How could a primitive species help when the galaxy's greatest minds had failed? "I need to see everything you have about these creatures," Han said finally. "All data, all footage, all reports from attacks. Everything." "Of course," Vel replied. "But may I ask why? What can humans do that we have not tried?" Han smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a person makes when they know something others do not. "Commander," Han said, "my species has been preparing for monsters our whole history. We just never thought we would find real ones." The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence felt different. It felt like the moment before lightning strikes. "How long will you need to study the data?" Vel asked. "Give me 3 days," Han said. "And I will need to bring 2 more humans here. Specialists." "What kind of specialists?" Han's smile got wider. "The kind that watch monsters for a living. The Monster Watchers." The transport ship landed on Nexus Prime with a soft thud. Steam rose from the landing pad as the engines cooled down. The massive research station stretched out in all directions, its silver towers reaching up toward the purple sky. 2 humans stepped off the ship. The first was a woman with long black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore a white lab coat over her blue uniform. Her name badge read, Dr. Yun Min, Xenobiology. She carried a small bag and looked around with curious eyes. The second human was taller and broader. His short black hair was neat and military style. He wore the dark green uniform of the human space marines. Captain Lee had scars on his hands and a serious face that had seen many battles. They walked across the landing pad toward the main building. Other species moved around them, all hurrying toward their own research tasks. A tall Zenthari with 4 arms rushed past carrying data tablets. A floating mechanic drone beeped softly as it scanned the air for chemical traces. "First time working with aliens?" Lee asked quietly. "First time working with anything this important," Yun replied. "Back home I study Earth animals. Here I am supposed to help save the galaxy. No pressure." "No pressure," Lee said with a small smile. The main doors opened automatically. Inside, the research center was huge. The ceiling was so high they could not see the top. Laboratories lined the walls on multiple levels. Scientists from dozens of species worked at stations full of blinking lights and strange machines. A blue-skinned creature with tentacles for arms approached them. It wore the silver uniform of a Nexus station administrator. "You must be the humans," it said through a voice translator. "I am Director Cole. Welcome to the Federation's primary research facility." "Thank you," Yun said. "We are ready to begin work immediately." "Excellent," Director Cole replied. "Your laboratory is prepared. We have tissue samples from 3 different Void Stalker encounters. The quantum microscopes are calibrated for carbon-based analysis. The computer systems have been programmed with all known biological databases." Lee and Yun looked at each other. "Actually," Yun said slowly, we do not need tissue samples right now. Director Cole's tentacles twitched in confusion. No samples. But you are a biologist. How do you study creatures without samples? We need something different, Lee said. We need all the video footage you have of these creatures. Video footage? Every recording, Yun explained. Security cameras, ship sensors, personal recording devices, emergency transmissions. Everything that shows these creatures moving or acting. Director Cole's tentacles moved in what might have been the alien version of scratching his head. That is unusual. The Zenthri researchers studied mathematical models of attack patterns. The Mechanic Collective analyzed quantum signatures. The Mindweave Coalition attempted psychic resonance mapping. And all of those failed, Lee pointed out. True, Director Cole admitted. Very well, follow me. They walked through the research center. Other scientists looked up from their work as the humans passed. A group of Zenthri had built a complex holographic display showing battle formations. Mechanic researchers had taken apart pieces of destroyed weapons, trying to understand how the Stalkers broke them so easily. Director Cole led them to a smaller room. The walls were covered with screens of different sizes. In the center sat 2 comfortable chairs and a table with food and water. This is your assigned space, Director Cole said. I will have all available footage transferred to these screens. But I must ask, what do you plan to do with this material? Watch it, Yun said simply. Watch it? Yes. We will watch everything. Multiple times if needed. Director Cole's tentacles drooped. For how long? Lee checked his wrist computer. Give us 72 hours. We will need food brought in, and please make sure no one disturbs us unless the station is under attack. 72 hours of just watching videos? Director Cole asked. This is your research method? This is our research method, Yun confirmed. Director Cole left, shaking his head. Within an hour, the screens around the room filled with video files. Hundreds of hours of footage from 17 destroyed colonies. Security recordings, emergency transmissions, combat footage from failed rescue attempts. Yun and Lee settled into their chairs. Ready? Yun asked. Ready, Lee replied. They started watching. The first video showed a mining station. Workers went about their normal duties. Then the lights flickered. Shadows moved in ways that shadows should not move. Workers started screaming and running. The camera shook and went black. The second video was from a residential colony. Families were eating dinner together when the attack began. Children played in parks while darkness crept through the streets. The footage ended with silence. Pause it, Lee said after the third video. Go back to the beginning of that one. Yun rewound the footage. They watched it again, this time more carefully. See how it moves? Lee pointed at the screen. It is not random. There is a pattern. Like a hunting behavior, Yun agreed. It is testing the defenses first. They watched more videos. Lee took notes on a paper pad, an old human habit that seemed strange in a room full of advanced technology. Yun drew sketches of the creature's shapes as they changed. Hours passed. They ate without looking away from the screens. They barely spoke, except to point out details to each other. Stop, Yun said suddenly. Go back 10 seconds. The video showed a Zenthri security team trying to corner one of the Stalkers. The creature was trapped in a corridor with walls on both sides. The security team had energy weapons ready. Watch what happens next, Lee said. The creature seemed to pause. Then it did something impossible, it walked through the wall like it was not there. The security team fired at empty air. Quantum phasing, Yun muttered. But that is not the interesting part. No, Lee agreed. The interesting part is the pause. It hesitated. Like it was deciding which trick to use. They looked at each other with growing understanding. It is not just using these abilities, Yun said slowly. It is choosing which ones to use. Like a person choosing tools from a toolbox. Or like a character in a story choosing which power to activate, Lee added. They kept watching. More patterns emerged. The stalkers always attacked in a specific order. They always used the minimum force needed. They seemed to enjoy the fear they caused. These are not just monsters, Yun said after 20 hours of watching. These are intelligent monsters. Smart monsters. Monsters that think like the monsters in human stories, Lee finished. By the end of the third day, they had filled dozens of pages with notes and sketches. The walls were covered with freeze frames from the videos. Lines connected different images, showing patterns and behaviors. Director Cole returned as promised. His tentacles moved nervously as he looked at their work. Have you learned anything useful? He asked. Lee and Yun exchanged a look. We have learned everything, Yun said. We know what they are, Lee added. We know how they think. And we know how to stop them. Director Cole's tentacles went rigid with surprise. You can stop the Void Stalkers. Not us, Lee said. But we know someone who can. Who? Yun smiled. For the first time in 3 days, it was a happy smile. Someone who has been training for this his whole life without knowing it. The ultimate monster expert. The video call connected with a soft chime. On the screen appeared a young man sitting in what looked like a basement room. Behind him, the walls were covered with posters showing creatures with teeth, claws, and glowing eyes. Shelves lined with books, movies, and collectible figures filled every available space. Marcus? Yun said, leaning toward the camera. Can you hear us okay? Marcus Chen adjusted his thick glasses and nodded. He looked to be in his mid-20s, with messy black hair and a t-shirt featuring a movie monster. Yeah, the connection is good. Though I have to say, this is the weirdest consulting job I have ever been asked to do. We need your expertise, Lee said, sitting down next to Yun. And we need it fast. Marcus laughed nervously. My expertise? I work at a movie rental store and write reviews for a horror blog. I am not exactly a scientist. You are something better, Yun said seriously. You are the person who has watched more monster movies than anyone else on Earth. According to your file, you have seen over 3,000 horror films, read every classic monster story, and played every creature-based video game ever made. That is, probably accurate, Marcus admitted. But those are just stories. Entertainment. Are they? Lee asked. He turned his screen so Marcus could see the wall behind them, covered with freeze frames from the Void Stalker attacks. Look at this footage and tell us what you see. Marcus leaned forward, studying the images. His casual expression slowly changed to one of intense focus. His eyes moved from picture to picture, taking in details. Oh, he said quietly. Oh wow. What is it? Yun asked. These things, they are not just killing people randomly. Marcus pointed at one of the images. Look at this pattern. The way they hunt, the way they stalk their prey, the way they use fear as a weapon. This is classic horror movie behavior. Keep going, Lee encouraged. Marcus's voice got more excited as he spoke. And this ability to phase through walls, to become invisible, to change shape. These are not random powers. These are the greatest hits of monster abilities. It is like someone took every scary creature from every story and combined them into one ultimate predator. Yun and Lee looked at each other. That is exactly what we thought, Yun said. But here is the thing, Marcus continued, warming to his subject. If these creatures are following horror movie rules, then they also have horror movie weaknesses. What do you mean? Lee asked. Marcus stood up and started pacing in his small room. Every monster in every story has a weakness. Vampires hate sunlight and garlic. Werewolves fear silver. Ghosts can be banished with the right ritual. The stronger the monster, the more specific the weakness. But these are real creatures, Yun pointed out. Not story monsters. Are they? Marcus stopped pacing and looked directly at the camera. Think about it. Where did these things come from? Dark space between galaxies. When do they appear? After sleeping for 10,000 years. How do they behave? Like intelligent predators that enjoy causing fear. He pulled a book from his shelf and held it up. This is every cosmic horror story ever written. Ancient evils that sleep between the stars. Creatures that exist outside normal reality. Monsters that drive people insane just by being near them. Your Void Stalkers fit the pattern perfectly. Lee frowned. You are saying these creatures are following fictional rules because maybe fiction and reality are not as separate as we think, Marcus said. Maybe when enough people imagine something, when enough minds picture the same type of monster, it becomes possible for that monster to exist. Yun shook her head. That sounds impossible. So does walking through walls, Marcus replied. So does becoming invisible. So does destroying 17 worlds in 17 days. But your aliens tried to fight these things with science and logic. What if the Void Stalkers are not science? What if they are story? The room went quiet except for the hum of the video connection. Assuming you are right, Lee said slowly, how do we fight a story monster? Marcus grinned. For the first time since the call began, he looked completely confident. The same way every hero in every story fights the ultimate monster. We figure out what it wants, what it fears, and how to turn its greatest strength into its greatest weakness. And you can do this? Yun asked. I have been training for this my whole life, Marcus said. I just never knew it was training. 2 hours later, Marcus was on a transport ship heading for Nexus Prime. He sat in his seat, surrounded by boxes of books, movies, and research materials he had insisted on bringing. The other passengers, a mix of alien species heading to various research stations, stared at him curiously. Marcus did not notice their stares. He was too busy reading and taking notes. He had 3 notebooks open and was flipping between a monster encyclopedia, a folklore collection, and a theoretical physics textbook that Yun had recommended. Excuse me, said a voice near his elbow. Marcus looked up to see a small, furry creature with large eyes. Are you the human specialist they are bringing in to fight the Void Stalkers? I guess I am, Marcus said. What kind of weapons will you use? The creature asked hopefully. New quantum destructors. Reality bombs. Psychic amplifiers. Marcus held up one of his notebooks. Stories, he said. The creature's ears drooped. Stories? Stories are the most powerful weapons humans have ever created, Marcus explained. We use them to fight our fears, understand our enemies, and imagine solutions to impossible problems. Every human child learns to defeat monsters through stories. But these are real monsters, the creature said. Not story monsters. Marcus smiled and went back to his reading. We will see about that. When the ship docked at Nexus Prime, Yun and Lee were waiting for him. Behind them stood Director Cole and several other alien researchers. They all looked nervous. Marcus, Yun said as he stepped off the ship, I hope you are ready for this. The situation has gotten worse since we called you. How much worse? Marcus asked, shouldering his bag of books. 3 more colonies, Lee said grimly. The attacks are getting faster. The Federation Council is starting to panic. Director Cole stepped forward. Mr. Chen, I hope you understand the pressure we are under. Every hour we delay, more people die. The greatest minds in the galaxy have failed to stop these creatures. If your unconventional approach does not work. It will work, Marcus said calmly. But first, I need to see everything. Not just the attack footage. I need to know the history of these creatures. When they first appeared, what they did before they went to sleep, why they woke up now. I need the whole story. The whole story. Director Cole's tentacles twitched. But we are trying to find a scientific solution, not write a narrative. Marcus looked at him seriously. Director, what if the story is the solution? The monster's true nature. Marcus sat in the center of the research room, surrounded by holographic displays showing 10,000 years of galactic history. Ancient texts floated in the air around him, translated into dozens of languages. He had been studying for 18 hours straight, but his eyes were bright with excitement. Found it, he said suddenly. Yun looked up from her own research station. Found what? The pattern. The origin story. The reason why these creatures behave exactly like fictional monsters. Marcus gestured to a holographic timeline. Look at this. 10,000 years ago, when the Void Stalkers first appeared, what was different about the galaxy? Lee joined them, carrying cups of coffee, a human beverage that had become popular among several alien species. According to the records, it was the first time all the major civilizations had contact with each other. The beginning of the first Galactic Federation. Exactly, Marcus said. Thousands of different species, all sharing their cultures for the first time. Including their stories. Their myths. Their legends about monsters and heroes. Director Cole approached with several other researchers. Mr. Chen, have you made progress? More than progress, Marcus replied. I have figured out what the Void Stalkers really are. He stood up and activated a new holographic display. It showed the galaxy as it was 10,000 years ago, with lines connecting different worlds. When all these civilizations first met, they did not just share technology and trade goods. They shared stories. Every species has monster myths, creatures that represent their deepest fears. The Zenthari feared machines that could think for themselves. The reptilians feared shadow predators. The waterworlds feared beings that could drain life itself. And? Director Cole prompted. And when you gather together the collective unconscious fear of an entire galaxy, when billions of minds all imagine the same type of ultimate monster, something happens. Marcus's voice grew excited. The stories become real. The Void Stalkers are not just creatures from dark space. They are living nightmares, created by the collective imagination of every species in the galaxy. The room fell silent. Several alien researchers made sounds of disbelief. That is impossible, said a Zenthari scientist. Stories cannot become reality. Can't they? Marcus asked. Your own species builds battle computers that predict the future by calculating probability. The Mindweave Coalition uses collective thought to bend reality. The Mechanic Collective creates machines that think and feel. If consciousness can affect reality in all those ways, why not this way? Yun nodded slowly. It would explain why they seem to know what each species will do before they do it. They are made from those species' own fears and expectations. And why normal weapons do not work, Lee added. You cannot kill a nightmare with a gun. But if they are made from stories, Director Cole said, then surely they can be unmade the same way. Marcus grinned. Now you are getting it. But first, we need to understand what kind of story this is. He pulled up footage from the most recent attacks. Look at the pattern. The Void Stalkers do not just kill randomly. They are escalating. Each attack is worse than the last. They are building toward something. Building toward what? Yun asked. The climax, Marcus said. Every story has to have an ending. And in monster stories, the ending comes when the monster finally faces its greatest enemy. You mean us? Lee asked. Humanity. Not all of humanity, Marcus said. Just one human. The hero of the story. The person who is destined to face the ultimate monster and either defeat it or die trying. Director Cole's tentacles moved nervously. And who is this destined hero? Marcus looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. The person who understands monsters better than anyone else in the galaxy. The person who has spent his whole life studying how to defeat them. The person who was trained by watching every monster movie ever made. The realization hit everyone at the same time. You, Yun whispered. Me, Marcus confirmed. The Void Stalkers are not going to stop until they face the ultimate monster expert. And according to the story logic they are following, that means they are going to keep destroying worlds until I confront them. But that is suicide, Director Cole protested. These creatures have destroyed entire battle fleets. What can one human do against them? What every monster-fighting hero does, Marcus said calmly. Figure out the monster's weakness and use it against them. And have you figured out their weakness? Lee asked. Marcus nodded. I have. But you are not going to like it. He activated another display, showing the psychological profiles of classic movie monsters. Every great monster has a weakness that is connected to its greatest strength. Vampires are immortal, but that immortality depends on avoiding sunlight. Werewolves are incredibly strong, but only during the full moon. The Void Stalkers' greatest strength is that they are the ultimate monster, they have every scary power from every story. So what is their weakness? Yun asked. They are trapped by story logic, Marcus explained. They have to follow the rules of monster stories. And the most important rule is this: the monster always loses in the end. But not always, Lee pointed out. Some horror movies have bad endings. True, Marcus admitted. But those are the exception, not the rule. And here is the thing about the Void Stalkers, they are not just any monster. They are the ultimate monster. And the ultimate monster always gets defeated by the ultimate hero. He pulled up an image of himself from his personnel file, a young man in glasses, surrounded by movie posters. I know it sounds crazy, Marcus said. I am not a warrior. I am not a genius scientist. I am just a guy who watches too many movies. But that is exactly what this story needs. The most unlikely hero facing the most impossible enemy. Director Cole shook his head. Even if your theory is correct, how do you actually defeat them? What is your plan? Marcus smiled. I am going to do what every monster-fighting hero does. I am going to walk into their lair, face them alone, and challenge them to a final confrontation. That sounds like suicide with extra steps, Lee said. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But it is also the only way to end the story. And if I am right about story logic, they will not be able to resist the challenge. They have to face me, because that is what monsters do when the hero finally arrives. Yun looked worried. And if you are wrong? Marcus shrugged. Then at least the galaxy will know that humanity tried something different. Maybe the next species to join the Federation will have a better idea. He started packing his books and notes into a bag. I need a ship and a pilot willing to take me to the last colony that was attacked. The Void Stalkers will still be there, they always return to the scene of their greatest victory. I will pilot the ship, Lee said immediately. Lee, no, Yun protested. This is insane. Maybe, Lee replied. But I have been watching Marcus work for the past day. He understands these creatures better than anyone. If he says this is the only way, then I believe him. Director Cole's tentacles drooped with resignation. If this fails, the blood of the galaxy will be on our hands. If we do nothing, the blood of the galaxy will be on our hands anyway, Marcus replied. At least this way, we go down fighting. He shouldered his bag and headed for the door. Besides, he added with a grin, I have been waiting my whole life to fight the ultimate monster. It would be a shame to miss the opportunity now. The Final Confrontation. The transport ship Destiny's Edge dropped out of hyperspace near the ruins of Colony Theta 7. What had once been a thriving world of 2 million inhabitants was now a dark, lifeless sphere drifting through space. No lights shone from its surface. No radio signals transmitted from its cities. Marcus stared out the viewport at the dead world, his bag of books and movies clutched in his hands. "There," he said quietly. "Can you see them?" Lee followed his gaze. At first, there was nothing but darkness. Then shadows moved across the planet's surface, shadows that moved against the light, shadows that existed where shadows should not be. "3 of them," Lee said, checking his instruments. "Maybe 4. The sensors cannot get a clear reading." "They know we are here," Marcus said. "They have been waiting." The ship's communication system crackled to life. Director Cole's voice came through, along with several other alien officials who had insisted on monitoring the mission. "Mr. Chen," Director Cole said, "the colony's main settlement is 12 kilometers from your landing site. Are you certain you want to go through with this?" "I am certain," Marcus replied. He activated his personal communicator so everyone could hear him. "But I want everyone to understand something. What happens down there is going to look like a monster movie. Do not try to help me. Do not send reinforcements. Do not interfere. The story logic only works if the hero faces the monster alone." Marcus, Yun's voice joined the conversation. "I have been thinking about your theory. If these creatures really are made from collective imagination, then maybe you can change them by changing the story." "That is exactly what I plan to do," Marcus said. "Every monster story has 2 possible endings. Either the monster wins and the world ends, or the hero finds a way to defeat it. I am betting on the second option." The ship touched down on the colony's landing pad with a gentle thud. Through the windows, they could see the abandoned settlement. Buildings stood intact but empty. Vehicles sat parked exactly where their owners had left them. It looked like everyone had simply vanished. "I am reading massive energy signatures moving toward your position," Lee said, checking his scanners. 3, no, 4 distinct entities. They are big, Marcus. Really big. Marcus stood up and slung his bag over his shoulder. Perfect. The bigger they are, the more dramatic the final battle. "This is not a joke," Lee said seriously. "If you are wrong about this, then I will be very briefly wrong," Marcus interrupted with a grin. "Lee, thank you for getting me here. Now I need you to do something important." "What?" "Fly away. Get to a safe distance and record everything that happens. If this works, the galaxy needs to see how it was done. If it does not work..." Marcus shrugged. "Well, at least they will have a good warning about what not to try next time." Lee hesitated. "I should stay. Provide backup. The hero always faces the monster alone," Marcus said firmly. "That is how the story has to work." The ship's airlock opened with a hiss. Marcus stepped out onto the colony's surface. The air was breathable but felt wrong somehow, too quiet, too still. The shadows around the building seemed deeper than they should be. Behind him, he heard the ship's engines powering up. Lee was following orders, getting to a safe distance. Marcus was now alone on a dead world with creatures that had destroyed 17 colonies. He walked toward the center of the settlement, his footsteps echoing strangely in the empty streets. His bag bounced against his hip with each step. Inside were his most treasured monster movies, the books that had taught him everything he knew about facing the impossible. "I know you are watching," he called out to the empty air. "I know you can hear me. My name is Marcus Chen, and I am here to end this story." The shadows around him grew darker. The temperature dropped noticeably. And then, slowly, they appeared. The first Void Stalker emerged from an alleyway between 2 buildings. It was tall, at least 3 meters, and its form seemed to shift constantly. Sometimes it looked like living shadow. Sometimes like empty space shaped into a humanoid figure. Its eyes were points of absolute darkness that seemed to pull light toward them. The second one materialized from the ground itself, rising like smoke given form. This one was broader, more solid-looking, with what might have been claws or tentacles extending from its arms. The third appeared last, simply existing where nothing had been a moment before. It was the largest of the three, and when it moved, reality seemed to bend around it slightly. They surrounded Marcus in a triangle, each about 10 meters away. He could feel their presence like a weight on his mind, ancient, intelligent, and utterly alien. "So," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "you are the ultimate monsters. The creatures that destroyed 17 worlds. The nightmares made real." The largest Void Stalker spoke. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, like an echo inside Marcus's skull. "You are the one who understands us," it said. "The one who knows what we are." "I know exactly what you are," Marcus replied. "You are every monster from every story, given form by the collective fear of the galaxy. You are the ultimate predator, the perfect nightmare, the enemy that cannot be defeated by normal means." "Yes," the second stalker hissed. "And you are alone. Weak. Primitive. How do you propose to succeed where entire fleets have failed?" Marcus smiled and reached into his bag. He pulled out a worn paperback book, a collection of classic monster stories that he had owned since childhood. "By remembering something that everyone else forgot," he said. "Every monster story has a hero. And every hero has a moment when they realize the monster's true weakness." The third stalker moved closer, its form shifting like liquid darkness. "And what weakness do you think we have, little human?" "The same weakness every ultimate monster has," Marcus said. "You are bound by the rules of the story you exist in. And the most important rule is this: the monster always reveals too much to the hero before the final battle." The stalkers paused. For the first time since the conversation began, they seemed uncertain. Marcus opened his book and began to read aloud, "The greatest monsters are those that reflect our deepest fears. But fear exists only in the unknown. Once we understand our monsters, once we see them clearly, they lose their power over us." "Silence," the largest stalker commanded. Its voice was no longer calm. There was something like worry in it now. "You see," Marcus continued, "you made one crucial mistake. You are the ultimate monster, which means you have to follow the ultimate monster story. And in that story, the hero always figures out how to win." He closed the book and looked directly at each stalker in turn. "You are not real creatures from dark space. You are living thoughts, created by fear and sustained by terror. Every time you destroy a world, every time you prove how unstoppable you are, you make yourselves more real, more powerful. But here is what you did not expect," Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. "I am not afraid of you. I have been studying monsters my entire life. I know all your tricks, all your powers, all your weaknesses. To me, you are not terrifying unknowns. You are just another monster from another story." The air around the stalkers began to ripple. Their forms became less solid, less defined. "And if I am not afraid," Marcus said, pulling out another book, then another, "then I can change the story. I can imagine a different ending." He opened book after book, reading passages about heroes who defeated impossible monsters. Stories about ordinary people who found extraordinary courage. Tales of hope triumphing over despair. "No," the largest stalker said, its voice now clearly panicked. "You cannot unmake us. We have destroyed worlds. We are eternal. We are inevitable. You are a story," Marcus said firmly. "And I am rewriting your ending." The stalkers began to fade. Their dark forms wavered like smoke in the wind. The temperature returned to normal. The oppressive weight of their presence lifted. "In the new story," Marcus said, closing the last book, "the monsters realize that they were created by fear, and they choose to become something else. They choose to become protectors instead of destroyers. They choose to use their power to help instead of harm." The stalkers stopped fading. Their forms solidified again, but something was different. They looked smaller somehow. Less threatening. "Is that possible?" the second stalker asked. Its voice was softer now, almost confused. "Every story can be rewritten," Marcus said gently. "Every ending can be changed. You do not have to be monsters. You can choose to be heroes instead." The largest stalker looked at its companions, then back at Marcus. We remember being afraid. Before we became fear itself. We remember when we were the ones hiding from monsters. Then help others hide," Marcus suggested. "Use your power to protect the innocent instead of hunting them. Be the guardian that watches over sleeping children instead of the nightmare that haunts them." The three stalkers looked at each other. Slowly, their forms began to change. The darkness that surrounded them shifted, becoming less oppressive and more comforting. Like the protective shadows that hide prey from predators, rather than the shadows that conceal predators from prey. We can try," the third stalker said. "But what if we forget? What if we become monsters again?" Marcus smiled and held up his bag of books. "Then I will remind you. That is what storytellers do. We remember the important stories and tell them to anyone who needs to hear them." High above, in the ship Destiny's Edge, Lee was recording everything. The transformation of the Void Stalkers was being broadcast live to the Federation Council, to research stations throughout the galaxy, to anyone who wanted to witness the end of the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Did it work? Director Cole's voice crackled through the communication system. Are they really changing?" Marcus looked up at the sky, knowing that thousands of beings were watching and listening. It worked. The story is finished. The monsters have chosen a new ending. The largest stalker, now appearing more like a guardian spirit than a nightmare, approached Marcus carefully. "What happens now, storyteller?" "Now you help rebuild what was destroyed," Marcus said. "You protect the colonies that remain. You watch over the galaxy that created you. And maybe, someday, new stories will be told about the monsters who chose to become heroes." "And what about you?" the stalker asked. Marcus grinned and shouldered his bag of books. "I go home. I have a job at a movie rental store, and I have been away for almost a week. My boss is probably worried." As he walked back toward the landing pad where Lee was bringing the ship down, Marcus could hear the stalkers behind him, discussing their new purpose, their new story. The dead colony would be rebuilt. The destroyed worlds would be remembered. And somewhere in the galaxy, new stories would be told about the day the ultimate monsters chose to become the ultimate protectors. Marcus climbed aboard the ship and settled into his seat. Lee looked at him with amazement. "You actually did it," Lee said. "You saved the galaxy by changing the ending of a story." "Stories are powerful things," Marcus replied, pulling out one of his books to read during the journey home. "They shape how we see the world, how we understand ourselves, and sometimes, how we choose to be." As the ship lifted off from the colony and headed toward hyperspace, Marcus smiled to himself. He had always known that stories were important. He just never imagined he would get to live inside one. And in research stations and council chambers throughout the galaxy, beings of hundreds of different species began to understand that sometimes the most powerful weapon against the impossible is a simple story, told by someone who believes in happy endings. The end.